Just getting prepped, man. I'm excited.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me into your virtual studio.
Not a problem, man. I honestly, I'm amazed that anybody's willing to participate. So the pleasure is mine.
Oh, good. I mean, we're in a strange new world and strange new experiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, are you drinking anything tonight?
I got a trusty bottle of water next to me.
I mean, water works. I'm gonna do a beer.
Okay. Um, Let me think here. I can emulate beer.
That's all right, man. That's all right. I'll have one for the both of us.
I mean, normally, yes. But at this very moment, with that disturbing the front section of dog, baby, and wife, no.
That's okay, man. I'll have one. I'll have one for the both of us. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So let's just hop right in, man. Um, you know, I appreciate you carving out some time this evening away from baby, dog, and wife, and chatting with me. I want to start first off. Introduce yourself and what you're doing now, and then we'll kind of take a journey into the past. And I want to hear kind of Jeff Prosserman's backstory. How did you come to be where you are today? What brought you here, right? And your experience with Samsung and NYC, their innovation division there in NYC, that's all a part of that. So first intro, and then let's do a little bit of backstory.
Sure. And just before I dive in, is this recorded and then presented as one session, or do you do any post production wizardry?
I do very little post production unless something like, critical happens that we're not allowed to talk about, that you accidentally talked about and I need to cut it out, or I say something stupid and my wife yells at me and says you can't put that in there, and then I take that out. But this is all being recorded and this will all be part of it. I mean, at a heart, this is just a conversation, right? It's us chatting. Gives you the ability to talk about yourself, your past experiences, opportunity for you to share about what you guys are doing at Voltpost, and then where you kind of see Voltpost going, where you see the technologies that you've worked on going, IoT specific. As an industry leader, that's kind of that's just what this thing is. It's a conversation, super low key, as you can see, hat and t-shirt at my bar.
Perfect. So just start from the beginning.
Just start from the beginning. Yep. Just give me an intro. Tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll take a trip to the past.
Okay. So once upon a time, joking aside, I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I moved to New York about 15 years ago. My background's in media, technology, advertising, now the future of electrification and the charging sector. Really just always been at the forefront of what's new and next, starting from the beginning of the internet when everybody needed a website. Somewhere along the way, everybody needed a mobile app. So we started making those. Passed through the lands of virtual reality and leading projects in augmented reality and XR and that forefront. And now I'm leading a EV charging company.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So what were some of the things that you did? I mean, starting in Toronto and getting to New York City, let's talk about that. Like what brought you into technology and innovation? How did you get into this world?
Good question. So if we're going back to the real beginning, back when I was in high school and every company needed a website, we just started designing and making those for clients, starting with doctors and lawyers and whoever basically would hire a couple high school kids. And although nobody knew how young we really were, and then built up a portfolio of larger companies until we were basically doing digital before it became a thing. Getting all multimedia DVDs were a thing back in the time. Some people listening to this may remember.
It's so crazy to me that we're in an era now where there are people that don't know what burning CDs is. Like, it blows my
All
mind.
that stuff. Yeah, we did all of that stuff. Physical media, and basically just built a small company, a digital agency. Put ourselves through high school and our undergrad, really, and then decided after graduating, I did actually an undergrad in film studies in Toronto.
Wow.
So I have a content background, so life takes you in different directions. Ended up actually producing and directing a couple of short films and a few features actually through that experience as well.
Wow.
That's a different chapter of my life, and it depends on how deep you really want to go.
Anything that we would know about? Anything that we would have heard or seen?
I don't want to speak to the ones at that point of my life because I wouldn't say they were all the ones I'm most proud of. But then when I
Okay.
did move to New York, worked in a digital agency for about a year and a half. It's a London-based agency coming in to New York, one of the first hires, and basically we built it from about a half a dozen of us to, I don't know, 40 or 50 people over the course of like 18 months. So really fast growth, working with clients globally, everything from BBC to J&J and a few other acronyms. But really pretty much building like Flash websites, doing e-commerce stuff, early days of all of that. Ended up in the next chapter of my life, starting a production company, basically being on the other side of the agency world. In that role, had a office in Dumbo before it was a place to really put shared office spaces, way before WeWork was a thing.
Right.
And ultimately had a small team where we did a couple films, did a bunch of advertising work. In that realm of my content career, directed, it was right around the financial crisis. So as things started to move in a different direction in the world, explored what do we want to do with this, ended up actually somehow connecting to the whistleblower of the Madoff scandal and directing and producing the feature documentary that was distributed theatrically and internationally on the whistleblower story, who fought for 10 years to bring that to justice.
Wow.
Brought us to the Senate floor, passing of the Dodd-Frank Act with our documentary crew. Produced another movie which won some awards and got distributed called Monogamy. And then somehow somersaulted, and this is what history does in your life and your experience, but then ended up at News Corp to launch the first mobile publication, which was called The Daily. Basically, this is Rupert Murdoch, Steve Jobs, really looking at what is mobile publishing. This is before anybody had an app for any of these things. First version of the iPhone and first version of the iPad. And basically came in as the early team before pre-launch on all of that.
Yeah.
And essentially built up the design and product team in-house. Again, one of those fast growth innovation, like
That seems to be a pattern with you, the fast growth innovation type things.
I basically find new areas that are uncharted tech media things, jump in sooner than others,
Yeah.
figure it out, build something, and then in some cases stay a while, in other cases on to the next one once it gets stabilized. So that would be a theme, I guess, through my career.
You think?
And then, yeah, we ended up basically building out the publication on mobile, on iPad, which became the backbone for News Corp, publishing for the various publications in the market today. And where did I go next? Did a stint briefly at Ogilvy.
I mean, this is fascinating to me because your background, like, at least from what I'm hearing, has very little to do with IoT, very little to do with kind of technological innovation, right? I mean, media and content relations and that type of thing. Like, there's innovative processes that are in that, right? Like, but your background is not really like technology driven, right? I mean, am I wrong in saying that, or was there a lot of technology that was happening behind the scenes and some of that stuff?
I mean, we were developing software from a product perspective, but definitely the first half of my career, nothing to do with hardware.
Yeah.
But then basically leaving News Corp, seeing 360 photography and 360 video was going to be a thing, but this is before Oculus had a Kickstarter campaign, so like really early in all of that.
Yeah.
And saw the opportunity for 360 video and VR. And basically, this was, I guess, the first real project. Founded a company where we were building the first live streaming 360 video platform. We had hardware where we actually partnered to develop a new camera format, stitching video together, and ultimately live streaming through the whole network, and the mobile, straight through to the mobile app. And basically worked with the music industry, with the major labels, Universal, Sony, and Warner, produced some shows, and then ultimately, as the whole VR industry, I would say lightly, never really found ways to path to revenue in the way that some people would expect.
They pivoted.
Pivoted to AR. But anyways, I mean, just with that, ultimately, it wasn't sustainable. Although we built a lot of cool tech, I got my name on a couple patents and got to work with a bunch of rock stars. And then from there, got sucked into Samsung, which basically I spent the last 4.5 to 5 years prior to what I'm doing now. So at Samsung, basically was on a design and innovation team in the role, ultimately ended as the director of innovation, but it was essentially starting with one project, which was the fridge with the screen on it called the Family Hub, where they basically realized that they put a screen on a fridge and now they had to figure out what to do with it. So our team was tasked to develop the new features and roadmap. So recognizing that food waste is a big problem, 40% of the food is wasted in the world, framed the experience around that, built hardware and software, which then went out on the next generation of that talking refrigerator with cameras and weight sensors and all that stuff that we pulled together. And then really at Samsung, managed a cross-functional team, both hardware and software. And yeah, really worked on different sides of what Samsung does: mobile, some TV projects, and IoT hardware.
Which is, I mean, it's Samsung, right? There's not many people in the world that probably have never heard the name Samsung. I think once upon a time, people didn't realize how innovative Samsung really was and the types of things that Samsung really did. Once upon a time, back when I sold appliances, Samsung sold TVs and appliances, and that was it. You know, they do a lot more than that, right?
Sure, yeah. And there are the things you can talk about and the things you cannot talk about. So for the purposes of the things you can talk about section of this conversation, they're basically split into 3 key divisions: mobile, the phones, TVs, and then the digital appliances and the larger hardware, essentially. The 3 consumer product divisions. and just leading innovation in New York City and managing a team across the country, and then working with our business units in Korea in HQ. Essentially, we were looking at, one, how do we build new platforms and services for what's in market today, and obviously leverage that hardware as an opportunity to create new business units. And then second, how do we completely create things from the ground up? Make a business case, prototype, validating that, and then when appropriate, scaling it up.
Yeah. Sounds very familiar.
Exactly. I mean, from your background as well. So yeah, I mean, that was great. But then ultimately, I guess to fast track into where we are in this chapter, recognizing that the climate crisis is coming at us, and being a father with a toddler, and questioning as an existential crisis, I guess, to myself, of what do I want to do with my life at the beginning of the pandemic, and which direction do I want to go now? I guess you could call it a pivot. Decided to go to Columbia University in New York to study sustainability management in the graduate program, because I wanted to understand the true pain points and the opportunities of what we're up against, and see if there's any chance to basically build digital products that could make a positive impact for the future of humanity.
Yeah.
So with my son as the center of gravity and a supportive wife and dog, decided to cut loose from my stable corporate gig and went back to school full time, just to crush through a master's program through the pandemic. Ended up writing a research paper looking at the electric vehicle charging space, especially how that works in cities or doesn't work today. And then pretty quickly took it from an idea, talking to a few people, and then snowballing into what is now Voltpost, a company that we've been working on for 2021.
Yeah. It's amazing to me because, I mean, in my line of work in the last few years, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. You know, I talked to a lot of startup, a lot of founders, a lot of technical founders. You're the first one that I've ever talked to that left, and a lot of them have left stable gigs, right? But you're the first one that I've talked to that left the stable gig to go to school full time and create a startup all at the same time in that same phase. It's like, it's got to be a lot. I mean, you know, the workload has got to be intense.
It's a lot.
But and I mean, to that, you guys are in how many accelerators right now?
Yeah, no, we're finishing the 2 accelerators. But really, I mean, like, I guess the best way I could say it is a lot of people watched a lot of Netflix during the whole quarantine thing. I did not watch any Netflix.
That's true.
I just really thought, what do I want to do with this time if we're going to be sitting around anyways? So I just did a lot of research on climate change.
Incredible, man. And so the gap that you found was around electric vehicle charging. So let's take an opportunity to kind of deep dive. I want to peel back some of the layers of the onion of what you're doing today with Voltpost, and give us a synopsis and a summary of what Voltpost is, what you're trying to accomplish with it, and where you're looking to go.
Sure thing. So we started Voltpost because we saw really a problem with city charging today, and wanting to start this from a purpose-driven company, recognizing the need to accelerate charging access and democratize charging access in order to decarbonize the economy. So today there's basically 1% of cars on road in cities that are electric. And if you read the reports, whether it be Bloomberg, McKinsey, and others, need to be on a pathway to about 60% by 2030 in order to avoid climate disaster toward a net zero pathway. So, majority of the cars in major cities park on streets. And if we wanted to get people who live in cities like New York, where we are, or pretty much every city in the world, let alone just in North America, to adopt an EV, convert, then you need access to charging that is convenient. Given that, doing a lot of research again, sitting in quarantine, looked at what was right in front of us, walking my dog around the neighborhood in Brooklyn, the city lamppost, and thinking through, is there a way that we could retrofit this into an EV charging station? And that kind of snowballed into what we're doing now. So basically, Voltpost is developing an integrated EV lamppost charging station. And we're doing this where there's both hardware and software component. On the actual hardware side, it's a retrofit to the existing asset, to the lamppost, lives on top of it, where it's non-invasive or minimal invasive, depending on the specific type of lamppost. It has 2 charging ports, J-plug socket, LED light feedback, a smart meter internal to track kilowatts consumed, and really fits into the fabric of communities. That's kind of what we're up to. I can keep talking about this, or just you guide it however you want.
I mean, it's fascinating to me because it addresses something that is going to be a big issue, right? Not necessarily a big issue today, but something that is very quickly going to be a big issue, in a way that's, as you said, it non-invasive, a lower cost model to use existing technology that's already there, which is awesome, right? I mean, it would be it's the dream of finding a solution where you're going to give people more access. You're going to save people money in installing this system and solution people are going to want, and they're going to be kind of pressured and forced into needing something like this, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the policy and market megatrends that are full tilt happening. The automakers are all investing tens of billions. Biden's committing to 50% EV by 2030. So the tailwinds are all there.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, if we're thinking about the next generation, then we have to get there. So for me, this is really all about decarbonization.
Right.
There's the product and there's the network, the hardware, the software, the mobile app, the dashboard, all the components that we're pulling together, and the incredible traction that we're getting from many cities, private companies, although I don't want to too deeply get into names yet because nothing's publicly announced, but really, like, everybody recognizes the need for charging in cities. Everybody sees that lamppost charging as a retrofit can significantly save cost, save timing, and minimize the footprint in communities. So instead of adding a new thing on the sidewalk, we're, by doing it as a retrofit, can really make this something that fits into the community and is accepted upfront. So yeah, I mean, it's been pretty exciting. We have a team in New York and San Francisco working full time on this, and plan to be piloting going into the first half of next year.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. It's amazing to hear. And I think when we first started talking, when you and I had our very first conversation, it feels like it was like a year ago at this point in time, although I don't know if it was that long ago. You were still trying to figure out kind of what you were going to do. So talk me through what led you specifically to the EV charging, and how did that kind of branch out from, because you've built products in the past. So I'm sure that as you were trying to figure out what to sink your teeth into, you had a board and there were a list of multiple things that you could probably, target your efforts and knowledge at, why the EV charging as opposed to maybe some other things that were on the board?
Sure, yeah. I mean, so yes, I had many ideas. I carry a small notebook in my back pocket for the last 15 plus years. I have many, many small notebooks filled with ideas. Throw them into a drawer, and who knows? Maybe I'll look at them one day. But honestly, just looking at the fact that the majority of greenhouse gases come from transportation, buildings, and energy. So those are the three elements or sectors where we have to dramatically shift. I mean, and we have to start yesterday. So given that I have this product leadership, executive management experience and have touched a lot of different sectors and kind of just dive in headfirst and figure it out before it's become a thing, like websites, apps, VR, AR, whatever the next IoT. The charging just felt like it had a lot of the elements as a sector that it was going to be huge. It is, obviously. You see the SPACs and everything that's happened in the first quarter of this year. So there's no question about that. Obviously, there's questions on how some of these companies make money and the sustainability of the business model of some of these earlier charging companies. But
Yeah.
I think they're all innovating and they clearly are well funded and like off to the races. So really, it was, I don't know if I chose this company outright. I know that I did a lot of research. I wrote a paper. And then as I started to share the idea, sometimes you don't get to pick the idea, but it kind of picks you because it starts to snowball. If you have half a dozen things that you're tinkering away and developing a business case and writing things down, that initial traction, the positive signals of not even the market yet, but just the people around you, it just becomes quite clear. Yeah, somebody has to do that. It's just the back of a napkin of this idea just kind of got people excited and inspired. And in a way, when people start doing things without pay because they just believe that this thing needs to exist, then, I mean, you could call traction or momentum or use all these words to be disruptive. But like, when you just break it down, when people are willing to go out of their way without pay because they believe in you or believe in the thing, believe in the vision, then it starts to just take on a life of its own. And then I guess my role, like when you're leading product innovation or early stages of development like this, is to be the director, to be the captain and help shape it. So I use the example of if you're an artist and you have a huge slab of marble that you have a vision of what you're trying to make. Maybe it's a horse, whatever, right? You can start hacking away, but really to get the form and shape and going through the initial research and conversations, the customer discovery, like you have a sense of what you think it should be, but it really is more about listening and chipping away from all angles. And then the true form starts to take shape. And yeah, I mean, it's really just been going faster than I would expect, but it's also the tailwinds of this industry right now are unbelievable. The need for charging is unbelievable. And if we can make a fraction of a real difference in that decarbonization of transportation, then we're doing something worthwhile.
Yeah.
I mean, then it's worth doing.
Well, and from your background and your story that you explained earlier, I wouldn't expect it to go any other pace than fast. I mean, right? I mean, it just makes sense that that you're going to get there and grow there at exponential rate.
Anybody who knows me is coming from a place of Jeff is the guy who's always doing the new thing before people see it as a thing, or even an industry. And then once it becomes too stable, too figured out,
then you're on to the next.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. When people started talking to me about like VR being the thing, I'm like, VR is totally dead. But I'm not gonna say that too loudly. But it's okay. It's okay. You guys focusing on that. I'm gonna go over here and innovate.
That's awesome, man. So we probably, I mean, I would say we probably have a lot of listeners. This is still very fresh and very new, but there are potential for some listeners to be kind of watching this and hearing this that could be in a position of where you were maybe 10, 15 years ago. What would be one or two key pieces of advice that you would give them, that you would give yourself 10 to 15 years ago, and in the same would give them?
Good question. I mean, I would ask them to look in the mirror, as cliche as that sounds, and really question, like, not just what you want to do with your life, but why do you want to do with your life? And it's something that I guess in this last pivot in choosing to dedicate my life to trying to make an impact in the sustainability area really gave me a renewed sense of purpose in what I'm living today. And I find that sense of purpose becomes something that's infectious and gets people excited and gets people wanting to just be a part of it. And I would say there's so many things you can do to make money. I mean, if you're willing to basically throw yourself out there, have strong work ethic, and learn a few skills, then hey, don't let anybody tell you can't do anything. But if you focus on the why instead of the what, then I feel like you don't get as lost along the way.
That makes sense. It does. Because, and I've even had him on the show. It brings me to mind of Mark Desantis with Bloomfield Robotics. He was, I think, 2 or 3 episodes ago, and he was sharing his story of, kind of going through the valley of death, is what he called it, or hell, and just having that. It's not for everybody. Not everybody should or can push through. But really pushing through further than what you think, because you never know when your moment is coming, right? It's interesting. It really is. So
also, it takes like 10 years of hard work to become an overnight success.
Right.
Like the media presents a story that is an illusion. You never get, I mean, there's podcasts and things that now get into some of the backstory, but I think that there really is so much of that journey that gets missed, so many failures. It's about resilience. It's about standing up in spite of past failures or things where you think you can't or won't or shouldn't, and have the courage to step up and persevere.
Yeah. What do they say? Fail forward fast. Isn't that the motto? Right.
Exactly. I mean, just gotta not give up, believe in yourself. Again, like very simple, but in the end of the day, it's like we only have so much time on this planet. So how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah. It's a humbling thought to think. It really is. And every time I think about it, and I grew up in church, and that was a very big, it was always something that was talked about. How much time you're given? What are you going to do with it? And every time I think about it, I'm always like, man, like am I doing enough? And the answer is always no. I'm not. You get sucked into this, that, or the other. And how often do we really sink our teeth into the things that are meaningful, not just to us, but after we're gone?
Totally. And that's what took me down this path, is simple realization that when my son is my age and we're past all of these statistics in 2050, and I look at him in the eyes, I have to think, what will I say? What will I think? And I just want to be able to look at him in that moment and know that I gave it my best shot.
Yeah.
That I tried. That I didn't watch the climate crisis just happen in the news reports and the headlines and expected somebody else would figure this out.
Yeah. It's such a monumental weight, right? When you put it in that perspective, it's such a monumental weight because, let's play the what if game. What if all the statistics are correct and we're all sitting there in our wheelchairs having conversations with our kids? You know what I mean? Like, it's really intense to think about.
It's terrifying. And honestly, the statistics are correct. And it's up to us to embrace the moment that we are the last generation that can turn this around. We are going to either be, not to be like overly dramatic, but it is dramatic.
Yeah.
We're either going to be the generation that saves the world or we don't. So, I think there needs to be way more people who have gotten to a certain level of success in their careers, who have whatever they may be, and choose to take that step to the left.
Yeah.
Just one step. And use those skills to fight this fight. Because we are not going to get there if we all believe that somebody else is going to do this.
Yeah.
We need people from all sides working on all cylinders.
So educate us a little bit. The statistics that you're talking about, what are we talking about?
I could direct you to a few very good books that will.
But when you're thinking, so when you're thinking through this though, and you're playing this in your mind, this conversation that you're having with your son in sometime in the future, like what are the ones that are like coming to the forefront that are like, this is going to destroy us. This is going to be a major issue. What are some of those? If you can pick a couple of them out.
Simply,
I'm shooting from the hip.
That's all good. Like, global warming brings sea level rise, brings wildfires, brings displacement of population. People living in poverty won't have access to water and food. So that's just to name a few. Dirty air. Like, there's so many, like, harsh storms. There's so many levels that we're seeing every week.
Yeah.
When we have quote unquote natural disasters happening at this pace, there has to be like a reframing. And sometimes the language we use is part of the challenge of this, in that it is just become the weather. And when we accept it as the weather and we start thinking about resilience and planning and the future, it's not great right now, but it is going to get worse unless we take the steps collectively. It's already in a pathway to get worse, but if more people stand up and try to fight this good fight and decarbonize everything, then it won't be as bad. I don't know where we'll end up. I don't have a crystal ball, but
right.
Simply the world needs more climate warriors.
Yeah. So pivoting a little bit after that, it's a hard pivot to make because it is such an important topic and an important conversation. In doing your part with Voltpost, where do you really see in the next 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, like where do you see Voltpost going?
Sure. I mean, our goal is to make Voltpost as ubiquitous as lampposts, as ubiquitous as the moving staircase was an escalator, which was a brand, which became called an escalator, or a telephone booth. So things you don't think about that live in the background in cities, but ultimately are used every day and just are part of our lives. I mean, the trajectory of 12 months to a few years out, I mean, we have financial models, we have plans, we have ideas of how quickly things like this can scale. But I can tell you, so I can't tell you exactly where that will all land, other than I believe whether it be Voltpost or other companies who are all rising up in the same area globally at the same time, that lamppost charging is here. It needs to exist in every city in the world, including small town USA. Like, this is just an extension of the built environment. And sure, we could get potentially a lot of market share, or who knows, the company blows up. It's too early for us to say, right?
Right.
But the category is real. The vision and where it needs to go is infectious, that everybody clearly sees the need. And we are swinging for the fences and running with a group of people who are really passionate, experienced. My co-founders have been incredible. Jeroen and Luke, one I worked with at Samsung, who's leading the product design development. Luke I met in the Sustainability Management Columbia program, coming from Barclays prior. So really fantastic product, really fantastic finance, and we're building a team around us who really just believe in the mission. So, I mean, the moonshot, it's like we need to ratchet down carbon. So who knows to what level can one company make?
Yeah.
Impact. But we've done our greenhouse gas reduction, sustainability impact projections alongside our financial projections. And for us, it's not like an afterthought. It's not, let's tack on a sustainability policy. It really is ingrained in the DNA of why we're doing this. So
That's awesome.
The future will tell how big this goes, and how far we can take it on an independent basis versus who knows, right? The trajectory of this space, though, is just over 100,000 public chargers in the US today. There needs to be over 1 million. Biden's committed to 500,000. There's a lot of room to go, and that's just in the US.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. So we're getting to the point of wrapping up. I ask this on every episode because I want to know, and if there's an opportunity for me to help push things along, I want to also make it available to our listeners and those that are watching and participating to help push it along. What are some things that you guys are looking for now, either by way of introduction or with a need with the company, or what is something that what are you guys looking for to help kind of push the needle forward right now?
Well, I mean, I guess if we're speaking to a broad, unknown audience of who may be listening right now, well, first, thank you for listening. and actually
Thank you.
with
Eternally
us.
grateful.
I would say join the Voltpost mailing list. That would be lovely. We're trying to build a community of people who are passionate about the cause. There's a policy component of what we're doing as well. Some people still don't like EVs. Some people think cars shouldn't exist. Some people think the world should be all autonomous and robots. None of those people are wrong. Everyone has their opinion. We believe that there's just a need to decarbonize what's right in front of us, which is people will need to get from point A to point B. And just like the innovation curve of anything else, there's a trajectory of A coming before B. So there's a component of, if you believe that lamppost charging should be a thing in your city, town, across your street, then talk about it. Because it's a new idea, new enough that it needs to become part of the zeitgeist. And everyone we talk to seems to be generally excited, at least to our face. But like, we can't be the voice box to the world. If you believe that this is an idea worth spreading, tell people.
Awesome. And if you get to this point, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you've made it all the way, I think this is you're my 11th recording, which blows my mind. I just released episode 7 earlier this week. So just excited to see where this thing has the potential to go. And at the very least, I love having these conversations. Jeff, thank you so much for taking family time, spending it with me, sharing about your history, sharing about Voltpost. It's awesome, man. I wish you all the luck in the world. And looking forward to seeing you guys crush it out there. Let us know. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Okay.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all for listening, whoever may be out there. And yeah, hopefully I encourage you all to do what you can to fight the good fight for the climate movement.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care, Alex.